pharmacy capital of the world. This being talked about is the new template of the international currency. We're talking about vaccine Maitri. And to do so, we're very glad to have this very distinguished panel of former envoys with us. So where does vaccine Maitri takes India's global image to? Well, remember, India has been much ahead of curve when we started this fight to beat COVID-19, and now the entire world is looking at India, not only in terms of beating the pandemic, but also dealing and containing with the pandemic. And we are very glad to have a very distinguished panel on DD Dialogue. It's a very distinguished panel of former envoys joining us on this very show. We are very glad to welcome on DD Dialogue this evening Ambassador Manjeev Puri on the show. Ambassador Manjeev Puri is former ambassador of India to Nepal, and also he has been part of various Indian missions abroad in multilateral agencies like United Nations and European Union. Ambassador Puri, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. Honored to have Ambassador Ruchi Gansham with us on the show. Namaste, ma'am. She has been Secretary West of MEA and also former High Commissioner of India to South Africa, besides holding very, very distinguished positions at unilateral agencies in MEA. Thank you so much, and extremely honored to have on DD Dialogue Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti with us. Very pleased to have you with us on the show on DD Dialogue, sir. Former Secretary MEA and also former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us on the show. I'm going to quickly start this with Ambassador Pinak Chakravarti. Very quickly to open the discussion. We started this vaccine Maitri under our neighborhood first policy. This was the initiative started somewhere in mid-January. When you look back, what is the kind of distance that we have covered? And especially, we started with a handful of countries, Ambassador Chakravarti, and now the whole world is looking not only up to India, but looking at India.
Well, it's quite natural that they'll be looking to India because we have 60% of the vaccine manufacturing facility installed in India. And we are the largest producer of vaccines of all kinds. So hence, it was only natural that once the tie-up with AstraZeneca was done with the Serum Institute of India, and they started producing way before actually the government decided that they will export and use it both for domestic and export. Now, neighborhood first obviously is a very important pillar of our foreign policy, and that has been leveraged through the vaccine Maitri effort, including giving of the first consignment is a grant, really. There's no fee for it. And of course, the countries will now tie up for commercial sales and commercial purchases.
Okay, Ambassador Puri, taking a cue from there, soft diplomacy to vaccine diplomacy, and how vaccine Maitri and the way this exercise is moving from strength to strength. This whole vaccine diplomacy angle, how do you really look at it, and what does it really do to India's international image at this front, at the COVID-19 front?
You know, for all three of us, we grew up in an era where we wanted the world to recognize what we always knew, that India was a force for good. Now, can you imagine someone like me, how delighted I was last week when the UN Secretary General says that the greatest productive asset in the world is India's production capacity of vaccines. You know, I am only reflecting what I know the world is looking at India. And I'll make a point here. This is a little bit, tongue-in-cheek point. The country with which all the comparisons that India has always had to face is our big neighbor to the north. I won't mention the country, but everybody will understand. When you say coronavirus, what is it that comes to mind about that country in the minds of anyone in the world, whether in the developed world or in the developing? And when you say the other country, India, what is it that comes into the mind? Whether it is the origin and the antidote. So I leave it to your discerning visitors, listeners, to figure this out. But look at the change and look what it has been able to do. But give me a second to expound on force for good. That India was always a country which was interested in human good. Obviously, our neighborhood counted the most, and it's the place where our abilities and our reach was the greatest. And we had to reach out to them. and we did it through the pandemic, whether it is supply of PPEs. Remember, we were importing these when the pandemic started, and today we are exporting them to the world.
Yeah.
Whether it was medicines, which at that time people thought would be useful, hydroxychloroquine, we even sent it to the United States, that great paragon of industrial might, because they had perhaps stopped manufacturing. These things happen in global supply chain. So India has always risen to the occasion for anyone in the world. It isn't for nothing that Brazil wanted to get the serum and the vaccines from India. And this is something which I feel very happy, that force for good. The good, of course, stands noted by everyone. But the other thing is equally important, which answers your question. What does it do for India's global standing?
Absolutely.
It shows we are also a force. We have the abilities. We are the country which can rise other than those in the global developed world.
Yes.
Remember, only 5 parts of the places in the world have developed a vaccine of their own: the United States, Europe, Russia, China, and it's
And
India.
India. And
We
India
are
being the
therefore
first country to
precisely,
launch the world's largest vaccination exercise, were the first to do so.
and shared it with the world at the same time.
Yes.
So we are the only ones who answer the WHO chiefs saying to the world that the world is headed to a catastrophic moral failure. We, on the other hand, are standing up for humankind and its good. What a
Okay.
good moment it is for India.
I'll just take a moment here. I'll just take a moment here and get in Ambassador Ruchi here. Ambassador Ruchi, ma'am, you've been India's envoy to South Africa. What Ambassador Manjeev Puri said, that this is something we've been wanting all through. I'm talking about you and many like you all, India's global standing. It took us so long, but finally, what does it really do? What has it really done? What I'm trying to ask you, have the rules of the game in diplomacy, in geopolitics, now post-pandemic, changed completely vis-a-vis India?
Thank you so much, Sakal, and thank you for having me on your program. I'm really enamored of what the two preceding speakers have said. It's very true. This is a moment that brings India into a very new light. I recall not so long ago when the world's pharmaceutical companies, the global pharmaceutical manufacturers, were trying to point fingers at India for our generic products being of by projecting that they were not of the same quality as the rest of the global manufacture. Today, that situation is no longer, to be seen. In fact, everybody is wanting a share of India's vaccine production. And as Manjeev said earlier, it's not just that we are manufacturing a vaccine that has been researched or devised elsewhere. These are being produced as well as for use in countries all over the world. And again, it is not just our neighbor to the north that we can contrast with. It is also the developed world that India can be contrasted with,
Yes.
where the rest of the world, the powerful world, was trying to do vaccine nationalism by procuring quantities from various kinds of vaccine manufacturers. Even before those vaccines had been approved or come into the market, India has started sharing its vaccines with the world even before we have vaccinated our own, even frontline workers. Even frontline workers in India have yet to be vaccinated, but we have already shared our vaccines, not just with our neighborhood, but with countries like, you were mentioning South Africa, because that's where I have served, where the COVID-19 pandemic has really wreaked havoc.
Yes.
With the, this new variant. So really, I think this is a very, very proud moment for all of us. And it is a time that we have shown really and truly our philosophy of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, because
Absolutely.
really the world is one, and COVID-19, like nothing else, has shown us that the world is one.
Ambassador Chakravarti, your thoughts here. This whole narrative of developed world versus developing world, and where India was pre-COVID era, and now where India stands, India's positioning, since we're talking about vis-a-vis vaccine Maitri, whether you're having a commercial ties with the rest of the world or some countries, or you wanting to give them vaccine as a gift, notwithstanding that, where does this put India to when this debate post-COVID times we talk about developed versus developing world?
Well, I think it's a huge mistake by the developed countries to think that this me first nationalism on the vaccine issue is going to help the world. It won't. Because if you remember that in this globalized world, about $18 trillion of trade are in intermediate goods. That is, something is made here and it goes somewhere else and it is incorporated somewhere else. You know what we call the global supply chains. Now, if the developing countries are not brought up and given the vaccine, then the whole economy is going to suffer, and the developed countries will also suffer. It's not that they will escape from this economic backlash. And hence, apart from the humanitarian aspect of sharing the vaccine with the rest of the world, this did not happen before. Unfortunately, when the SARS vaccine, the SARS and the Ebola sort of viruses, there was a lot of cooperation. Even US and China were cooperating, and India was providing the vaccine. Ebola and the SARS and AIDS. If you go back to the AIDS thing, again the vaccines, the medicines produced in India actually rolled back many of these viruses. But unfortunately, in the kind of Trumpism philosophy that me first and America first and only, this kind of nationalism has infected a lot of other countries as well, even including Europe. They're trying to ban the vaccines from being exported now. But of course, India has not obviously followed that path because we have a different philosophy, a different vision of international cooperation, which is embedded in our ITEC program. And, it is as old as 1964, that when the ITEC program started. And what was it? It was about a vision of helping the newly independent countries that were coming on the world stage. We didn't have that much then. Our economy was not that great at that time. Yet we shared. And that's the philosophy India is still following. And I'm sure we will follow it. We should, of course, have to finish vaccinating our own population as well. The frontline workers will be, I think, finished by March, they say. And then by March, I think others will get their vaccines. So I think I'm quite sanguine that we will conquer this pandemic. And even today, I think the kind of caseloads that we are seeing is very, very low.
Yes.
And we have vaccinated the maximum number of people already within India.
There's a consistent upward trend, Ambassador Puri, in recovery rate vis-a-vis a consistent declining trend in death rate. My question to you is, now are we looking, since we're talking about vaccine Maitri, focusing that bit, this is a new template for the new world order where India takes the lead. You all talked about the so-called hyper-vaccine nationalism practiced by certain developed countries, which you would believe is not helping them. But at the same time, our Prime Minister talks about Atmanirbharta. Yet, which doesn't mean that you're closing the door to the world. We are Atmanirbhar, but we are here. You can depend on us as well.
Let me put it to you a little slightly differently. Look, India has always believed that it will succeed as part of the world and that we are part of the human family. That's been our guiding philosophy. But I think, again, I take you back to the words that I used, force for good. It's one thing to talk in terms of sharing your abilities, being there as a humanitarian actor. And yes, we are doing good. So we are a good country. Remember, one of the few summits that took place during COVID was with the European Union, where it was agreed by both parties that they will strive to make the vaccine a global public good. And remember, during the WHO's annual meeting, the United States stayed away from that resolution for no other reason but for IPR. Now, I'm not blaming anyone. Look, my interest in India is not just goody-goody. My interest for India is a force for good, that we have capabilities. I have nothing against commercial interests. I have nothing against India selling the vaccine commercially. Why not? It is our capability. It is us who is a good developing industrial society doing
Hmm.
very well.
Hmm.
If pre-COVID, we were the fifth largest economy in the world, and yes, COVID has hit us quite badly. But soon we will be back in that position and going towards
COVID
the
has hit
third
the
largest.
whole world. Yes.
Well, we will have to recover from the
Yes.
downfall.
Yes.
So we are going towards the third largest economy in the world.
Hmm.
Let us keep this in mind. This is actually a signal to the world that we are good, we are part of the human race, and we want progress in the human race as such. But we are ourselves a hugely capable society which can do things for itself and do things for others. We, in a sense, this is a game-changing and arrival moment.
Yeah, that word, Ambassador Ruchi, game changer. So what all does it change from the perspective of foreign policy? When the world looks at India through foreign policy prism.
I think the most important thing is the way in which India engages with the world. You know, as I mentioned earlier, just a few years, maybe 10 years ago, there was a move by the multinational companies, the multinational pharmaceutical companies, to get India's pharmaceutical products to become unavailable, or to be branded as substandard, not good enough. Today that situation does not arise, and it's simply the way we engage, the way others engage with us, that is completely different from what it used to be before.
Hmm.
At the start of the pandemic, I was in the UK as High Commissioner of India to the UK.
Yes.
And it was at that time that I was approached by senior members of the UK government. That at that time, Serum Institute had not even come into the picture. And even before that, people started to approach me and to talk to me and ask me, would it not be a really good idea if the vaccine which is being developed in the Oxford University, if we could find a way to work with India and to get the Serum Institute of India and manufacturing companies in India to come on board, because that's the only way that large scale manufacturing of vaccines can take place. Today, nobody doubts that. And I think that is where, when we talk of game changer, the word, that is where you can see it evident. The way you engage with people, the way people engage with you. India is a confident nation today. Today, India is at the high table. You know, nobody is looking at us as a country that is also ran, that is, maybe has to be helped. No, today India is a country that is a part of the solution, that is a part of changing the situation for others.
Hmm.
Look at the way, COVID is spreading everywhere. India is confident enough to be able to say, I have challenges at home, but no problems. We will deal with the challenges at home, but we will also come forward and help others who need the help. That's where the change is.
That's a very striking thought. I would want Ambassador Chakravarti to share his thoughts on that. India at a high table. India at a high table, because I have all these envoys, former envoys on the show, high table at the forefront in this space. When we're talking about this vertical, foreign policy, diplomacy on vaccine front, you're engaging with the stubborn world, you're engaging with the friendly world, you're also engaging with the world which is underdeveloped.
Well, the high table concept can be applied to various sectors, and of course, in the vaccine sector, there is no doubt that we are on the high table. I mean, if you produce 60% of the global vaccine supply, then obviously you are on the high table. But there are other sectors where we may not be on the high table, and I shall not get into those sectors. But certainly, since we are discussing vaccines, there's no doubt about it, and it also helps us create more space for our diplomacy. After all, when you supply vaccines, the world gets to know that, all the countries around the world know, oh, where is this vaccine coming from? Oh, it's coming from India. So there is an image issue here as well. And that is what I called in my openings, when I was in my opening remarks, the soft power diplomacy, as we call it,
Yes.
that they look at India as a vaccine power, and certainly on the high table, as you say. And so I think this is a very important aspect of our vision and diplomacy. The fact that we are, unlike some other countries, as both my colleagues said, to the north, who tried to leverage the supply of vaccine and wanted quid pro quos. Look, Bangladesh, for example, I know that the Chinese were willing to offer and do their tests, etc., but they wanted the Bangladeshi government to pay for it. Now, and the Bangladeshi government was obviously reluctant because it didn't probably think that it was necessary for them to get the Sinovac or the whatever vaccine they were trying to supply tested on Bangladeshis, on second and third stage trials, and then also pay for it. So I think so that's where India stepped in and said, look, our vaccine is ready and we'll supply it to you. There's no question of testing and there's no question of paying.
And we gifted them, the country in question, Bangladesh, we gifted them vaccine. Before
we did, not just to Bangladesh, but to all our neighbors, except Pakistan, I think, because that's a different story.
Yes, Ambassador Puri, you want to come in here? I could see you were smiling out there. That point of creating a different space for yourself in world diplomacy front.
Look, again, let me reiterate. There is absolutely no doubt that the coronavirus has given us an opportunity and we've risen to the occasion. Now, how we are able to leverage it into all those tables that Master Chakravarti mentioned is a matter that will, of course, test our diplomacy. But more than that, let me tell you, it will test how we are able to leverage all of this in terms of India and the global economy and what we are able to do with that. So, the world is a place which says thank you, but then moves on. Remember that humanitarian assistance for long has been, in a sense, a proxy for various other things which the world doesn't indulge in today, by and large, in large measure. So yes, this has become part of the international currency. You have to play the game.
Yes.
Let me take a few seconds of your time and remind you of something that Master Ghanshyam and I used to be involved in about 10, 15 years back. India has been in the business of doing some things in terms of humanitarian assistance worldwide now for at least 15 years. Let me remind you, when the tsunami struck, even though we had endless number of issues in India, we sent ships all the way to Indonesia. For Sri Lanka, we were more than the first responders. For the Maldives, we did what we could, and for Myanmar, the most affected, and Bangladesh, of course. But these countries certainly. When the earthquake struck Haiti, we were among those who were there to see whatever we could do from a very faraway country.
Okay, so we're going to basically, we're at the final lap of the show, and I'm going to come to all three of you. The last bit. The last bit is the way forward. I would like to start with Ambassador Ruchi. The way forward, vaccine Maitri has given us a very different edge of sorts, like the way you're describing it. We're at the high table, and this is just the beginning, by the way.
Indeed, it is just the beginning. I mean, at the moment, of course, I think I wanted to make this one clarification for your listeners and your viewers. The use of the AstraZeneca Serum Institute vaccine in South Africa has been paused temporarily. So that is not to indicate that there is anything wrong with the vaccine, but that there is a new variant in South Africa, and this vaccine needs to be tested against for its efficacy on that particular variant, and for that the tests are required to be done. So future, I think the vaccine itself has a long future, because we are talking as yet of just a really small number of countries, and we are nowhere near the end of the pandemic. But to me, actually, what this whole vaccine Maitri initiative is doing is to place the entire Indian pharmaceutical industry at a completely new space, at a new level. Again and again, I want to say that I think there should be no more questions asked about the efficaciousness, about the quality, and about the efficacy and use of the Indian pharmaceutical products abroad. What it also does is to establish the science and technology from India as a very mature entity in its own right. And I think going forward, obviously upwards is the only way that I see.
Lovely. Going forward, upward is the only way that Ambassador Ruchi sees in terms of vaccine Maitri. And Ambassador Puri, what does vaccine Maitri way forward imply to you?
I see India going forward and in the upward direction.
Okay.
You know, vaccinations, generic medicine, Indian pharmaceutical industry, very good. It basically shows the Indian economy and its ability to contribute to the world. So it's not only a signal to global supply chains, it's a signal to the world that here is a country which has capacities, capabilities, and wants to be part of the rules-based international order and is therefore a good and solid contributor. And therefore, I only see India going upwards and forward.
Yes. And final word from Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti. India setting the rules.
Well, let me talk about the medicines first. And India has been a major provider of medicines to the world. This is a fact. And this vaccine that we are providing to a lot of countries will only strengthen that and open up more markets for us, perhaps. And I think that is a very important aspect of our diplomacy, to open more markets for Indian pharmaceutical products. I think that is a very important lesson and a factor that will ultimately we'll have to see and follow it up. I'm not saying that this vaccine is going to erase our other problems or other bilateral issues that we have. Those are to be worked on and sorted out separately. But yes, it will help the economy if we can create more space for our medical products abroad and earn more money for our companies and perhaps increase our exports as well. So I think that is a very important factor in this vaccine Maitri diplomacy.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much, Ambassador Manjeev Puri, former Ambassador of India to Nepal, and also Ambassador Ruchi Ghanshyam, former Secretary MEA and former High Commissioner of India to South Africa. And very, very thank you to Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, former Secretary MEA and former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you, all of you, for joining us on DD Dialogue. So as our panelists pointed it out, vaccine Maitri has not only taken India far ahead, much ahead, as they put it, on the high table, but India leading the rules of the games, as they put it, but this being a very, very important part of the international currency, as put forth by our former envoys on the show. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us on DD Dialogue. And viewers, thank you so much for tuning into DD Dialogue. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in Central Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite